right, what's going on, wheelers? You're listening to the Light Bars and Lockers podcast, the show where we talk about sick Jeep builds, answer your Jeep questions, and discuss ways to beef up your ride. As always, we've got Tim from TMR Customs. Ryan is busy opening a new shop, so he's busy, getting more successful. So he's not joining us today. So, Tim, what's going on, buddy? I guess we sort of talked quickly, but
we talked briefly. We're in the middle of a shock mounting sale right now, so it's kind of funny you mentioned that we do coil spring and shock and coilover as our show topic. Kind of fits in line with what we got going on at TMR Customs right now. So things are good.
Yep. Awesome. Yeah, I probably subconsciously I got your emails, and I'll tell you, I get like 20 of your emails, right? And I think, I don't know if it's just because of like the wholesale side of things or what, but I'll get 2 emails from you, and then 5 minutes later, it's like rapid fire. Ding, 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 ding.
It's
holy shit.
It's probably because you're on wholesale and because you're on both websites. You're on like the Canadian site and the US site, right?
Yeah.
And then if you're adding to cart, on both, and check you were hitting
those. Yeah. Well, yeah. I got lots of emails. So I guess subconsciously, it's like, it's seared into my brain what's going on this week. So. Cool. So we'll let's do that as the product of the week. Might as well do it right off the hop. Tell us about the sale and tell us what products are on sale. Chances are by the time people hear this, the sale might not be on.
No, that's cool. But yeah, for anybody tuning in, watching us live, so we've got a shock mounting sale. So that covers like hoops, towers, brackets, tabs, basically anything you'd need to install an aftermarket shock, coilover, ORI strut, bypass shock. I mean, we're going to touch on a few of these in this episode, but basically if you're building something, if you're building like a 110 Jeep, you're doing something hardcore where you're swapping into a coilover or high performance shock like that, then it's 20% off. Just hit our website. You'll see the homepage there. You click on the main image there, and that'll take you right to that featured collection.
Okay, cool. Okay, well, let's jump into the whole entire idea of like the springs and shocks and coilovers and all that fun stuff. And let's just start out with like the fundamentals. So I have a JL. What comes stock with most Jeeps? I assume it's the same regardless of the model, right? Like whether it's Rubicon, Sport, the Heritage, etc.
Yeah, so if we're talking JL, JT, JK, TJ, and basically this would start at TJ and XJ, it's going to be a standalone coil spring and a standalone shock. So those two things are not mated. They're basically positioned side by side. So if you look under your Jeep, you're going to see a big slinky looking thing. That's going to be your coil spring. Right beside that, you're going to see essentially a shock. It's generally going to be about 2 inches in diameter, but that's your shock. So those two things work together to dampen the ride of your vehicle.
Okay, got it. So, and they're totally separate, right?
Yeah. So the coil springs in there, it's basically going to be mounted on like a bucket on the axle, and then there's going to be like a tower up on the frame that's going to hold the coil spring, and then right beside that you'll see the shock absorber. So if you purchase like a quote unquote lift kit, most of those are going to come with a new coil spring that pushes the vehicle up in height and a new shock absorber that's a matched height to be paired with that.
Okay, awesome. I love it. Slinky looking thing. Somebody likes that. Perfect. It is what it is, right?
Honestly, I just pictured, I'm like, if I told my kid, like, find something fun under there, they'd probably point to the Slinky.
There you go. That's awesome. Nice. Okay. So, are there any advantages to like the stock, like coil spring and shocks?
Simplicity. I'd say reliability. And I mean, we can get into that more, but, and just common parts. I mean, ultimately, it gives you a super huge range of lift kit heights. There's a lot of shocks that you could choose for that. You can go with like a cheap white box shock. So, I mean, if you're in the middle of nowhere and you blew a shock out in your Jeep and you're on a road trip and you got a replacement, you've got to replace it. I mean, walk into Napa, get a part, put it in there. Pretty straightforward. So, yeah, I'd say ease of use, ease of serviceability, and just lots of options for lift heights and customizing essentially the ride height of your Jeep.
Okay, right on. Yeah, I was gonna say, because I've got the Combat low center of gravity lift, which, as I mentioned before, we test everything, right? So we tested out that aluminum spacer lift, I guess it is.
Mhm.
And I mean, that essentially, maybe walk me through how that works with the combination between the coil and the shock itself.
Sure. So that essentially is a spacer that is going to be put on top or below. It'll depend on the application of the coil spring. So you have the factory coil spring. You've basically added a block or spacer to give yourself some more lift height, and then the well thought out spacer budget boost kits like that, they'll come with a shock extension, because obviously now that we've raised the height of the vehicle with that spacer, the shock now is kind of potentially outside of its operating range. So you want to spacer that shock as well to get it so it's in the matched range, and still set up like the OE intended in terms of travel length.
Okay, right on. Yeah, so that's perfect. And Combat has some, they're aluminum ones. I was looking at them the other day. Gone through an entire winter of being, beat up in the east, right? With the crap that they put on our roads for no apparent reason. If it rains, it's going to be just covered in that shit that they put down.
Yes.
And it looks like brand new. Like it's still, that's one of the things the guys, when they put it on, they said basically, you have it for life. They're just built so tough. So awesome. Yeah. So that's cool. Let's talk about the coilover then. What's the difference between the double, like the coil and the spring, versus the coilover?
Okay, so a coilover is going to be standalone. Basically, the middle of the coilover body is going to be the shock portion. Outside of that, you're going to see the coil spring or slinky wrapped around that. So coilovers, like if we're talking Jeeps, off-road buggies, any of this stuff, they're going to have two springs on them. It's called dual rate. So you've got a top spring, which is softer than the bottom spring. The coilover is nice because it's smaller. You've basically got the shock with the coils wrapped right around that, as opposed to the big coil spring and the shock beside it. So it's a smaller package. The other nice thing is it's infinitely tunable. So that coilover shock can come apart. You can change the valve shims in there. You can change the piston itself. You can really control how that vehicle rides. And it also gives you infinite options in terms of lift height, because you're just essentially playing with different spring rates to set the vehicle at the ride height you want. So you can definitely do more with a coilover shock.
Okay. All right, cool. I'm curious though. I typically don't see coilovers around here. You see them a lot in like Arizona and California, things like that. Why would that be typically?
So they're definitely more of a hardcore upgrade. There are bolts on coilover kits. They're kind of few and far between. Most people that would do a coilover swap would buy fabricator or builder parts from me. Like they'd buy the tower, like a shock tower, a shock hoop, weld that onto their frame or chassis, and then connect the coilover shock. So I would say they're a more advanced upgrade, whereas the average guy is probably going to go into their Jeep shop, four-wheel drive shop, and just say like, hey, I want X lift height because I want to achieve X tire size. So that's the basic way to go about doing it. You might get the same person eventually be like, okay, I want bigger axles. I want more suspension travel. That's where a coilover can really help you compared to a spring and shock. A coilover with a long arm, you can pull more travel, flex, articulation, whatever you want to call it. That's kind of when you would see those. So that's why it's definitely not as common as a standard lift kit, which is going to be a standalone spring and shock.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. How are they as durable? Like, do they hold up? The coilover?
Yeah, a coilover requires more maintenance, for sure, because the end bearings in them. So at the top you have a rod end, at the bottom you have a rod end. There's a small spherical bearing inside those. Extremely strong. They'll misalign a fair bit, but they do wear out faster than like a rubber bushing that's going to be in your shock guide. So your shock guide is going to come with something that's more suited to a Northeast climate, like we're talking. Truthfully, being in Ontario here, if people contact me and they start asking questions about coilovers or that, I usually say, is the vehicle summer only? If it is, awesome candidate. If it's year round, if you've seen a set of coilovers after a couple winters, they look like hammered dog shit. Like you spent big money, and they look like a fucking pile. Essentially, because that coilover spring is tight to the body, and then you have a slider in between the two. They just trap more shit in there, and that slider's moving up and down the shock body, dragging that shit. So I mean, at that point they're going to be more prone to leaking. You're going to need to reseal them more frequently. So I'd say from a flat out simplicity and reliability standpoint, a standalone coil spring and shock is the better path than a coilover.
Okay, cool, good. Question from the audience: what about ORIs? Tim, you love these. Has the luster worn off on them? First of all, what's an ORI?
Okay, so it's similar to coilover in that it's standalone. It's literally the one shock body is going to support the weight of the vehicle. So again, it's smaller like a coilover, so it's easier to fit and package. ORIs are awesome on vehicles for general trail riding. I wouldn't say super severe duty abuse as they market them. They market them in terms of you don't need a sway bar, you don't need a limit strap, you don't need a bump stop. They have an internal bump stop, which is pretty cool, but it's small. It's essentially like like the size of the end of your thumb. If you look at like what would be a hydraulic bump stop on like a race application, it's going to be much bigger, provide more damping. So, and ORIs, in my opinion, they overrate them in terms of weight. I think they're great on vehicles that weigh up to 5,000 pounds. To me, that's the cutoff. Beyond that, you need too much charge pressure because they're nitrogen charged to hold the vehicle at its ride height. So I think they're great for TJs, YJs, anything smaller and lighter like that. A two-door JK, if it's light in terms of bumpers and armors, you could get away with it. But being that the bulk of the Jeep market now is four doors, I don't think they're a good fit on a four-door JK, JL, or obviously JT. So that's why I think you don't maybe hear as much about them if you're in the Jeep world. The newer Jeeps, in my opinion, are just too heavy for them, and there's other better options.
Got it. Okay, cool. All right. Cool. No, that's super helpful. Question about what about? I think we would probably answer this. So if I'm daily driving my Jeep, I'm not hitting super hardcore trails, and I certainly, if I live probably where there's a lot of salt and brine and what have you, would you recommend coilovers?
No, not at all. Just keep it simple. Coil and shock is the way to go for you. If you daily drive your Jeep, but you live like in the Southwest, I mean, if you're California, Arizona, Nevada, New Mexico, I mean, you name it. If you don't have any salt exposure, then yeah, coilover for sure is a good option for you because you can really fine tune the ride quality of your vehicle. But that takes a lot of time. You have to put in the effort to take that, pull that shock out of your vehicle, take that shock apart, reshim it, bleed it, put it back in the vehicle. It's definitely a labor of love. So if you're into that and you're techie and you like tuning, then that's something that's awesome to chase. If you just want simplicity, go with, and I mean, there's aftermarket brands of coilovers that are vehicle specific. So you might buy a bolt-on kit and they valve that coilover for a JK or for a JL. That's going to be a good package out of the box. But if you're just buying an off-the-shelf universal coilover, you're definitely going to have to put in a lot of work to get a quality ride out of it.
Okay. Awesome. No, that's cool. Sorry, I was just bringing it up to the comments so I could see.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay, cool. So what about like high performance shocks then? So if I'm thinking maybe a coilover, but it just doesn't work for whatever reason where I live, etc., what about high performance shocks?
I think there's some awesome stuff out there now. And this really started with the JK. If we look at GJs, YJs, XJs and previous, there wasn't a lot out there. Yeah, there was some stuff that's better than the white box stuff, but really JK and newer, this stuff's taken leaps and bounds. So common brands you'd see would be Fox, Falcon, King, Radflow. Basically all your top coilover and shock manufacturers are making bolt-in OEM, like bolt-in shock. So you can keep your coil spring and then buy a wicked shock to be paired with it. So yeah, I think those are an amazing option. Like on the Super Jeep build we did, we wanted to keep it simple to showcase like our 1-ton swap trusses. So we kept it's on a JKS coil spring and it's on a King triple bypass shock. So ride quality wise, that'll spank a universal coilover all day. And it's a simple option. So those are a really good one. If you want to up the ride quality of your vehicle, look at a performance shock that's still going to be paired with a coil spring. I think that's a fantastic way to do it, a newer Jeep build.
Okay, right on. Yeah, and I was going to ask you about Super Jeep, what you had there. So yeah, I guess you answered that question. What about your the TJ?
Yeah, okay, so the TJ, which you would know as the Blueprint, or that's what Colin's referring to, It's on ORIs. It weighs sub 4,500 pounds. And ORI strut's a real good option for that. We don't race that Jeep. It's used for trail riding and crawling, and just getting out and having fun. We'll street drive the thing in the summer. And again, that does not see winter. So I would not run an ORI strut on a vehicle that sees our Northeast winters with a salt and brine. But yeah, being that that's just a summer play vehicle, ORI strut's an awesome package for that. It's a good setup.
Okay, awesome, love it. Going back to just the performance shocks, like, don't the Gladiators now come with Fox shocks?
Yeah, the Gladiator's got a Fox shock in it that's tuned specific to that. So I mean, obviously they've spent some time with Fox to work on the valving, and that's not just a white box shock that matches the compressed and extended length. They've tried to tune that ride quality. I'm happy with it in mine. Shocks are very personal. Some people will love a ride of a vehicle, and someone else would hop in it and hate it. It's a really personal thing. I like it in the Gladiator. That's why when I went to do a lift, I just did a budget boost from AEV, which was spacer lift, shock relocation, rear dry shaft spacer. Real simple, but I liked the ride of that shock. So I was like, I don't see the need to chase an aftermarket shock here. I think it performs really well, so I'm happy with it.
Okay, right on. Yeah, I've heard. I obviously in the JL just have the whatever out of the box fun stuff, but and it's great too. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, the Fox. I tell you, the Falcons though, I've been eyeing those for a long time. Yeah, like adjustable Falcons, like they're pretty sweet.
Yeah, a shock with external adjustment's a great idea because it gives you a little bit level of control over ride quality. Because like I say, ride quality is really subjective. Same goes for the racing. Someone will hop in like a race buggy, tear ass, think, oh, that ride's amazing. Someone else would say that doesn't ride amazing for me. So I do like a shock. Like those Falcons are super, super popular. You see those everywhere. It looks like they use really good coatings too. So I've seen a couple that are in our climate that have been exposed to winter, and it looks like they hold up. So I think they do a really good job with like a hard anodize on those. And they seem pretty durable.
Okay, cool. Real quick question from Dion. It looks like a little bit of a sidebar perhaps, but and we've covered this in a previous episode, but just quickly, what's your opinion in long arm versus short arm? And of course, don't forget the ever popular mid arm.
Yeah. Okay. So that was a previous episode. Long arm's gonna ride smoother. Zero questions there. You've got a flatter control arm. That's gonna be more compliant when you hit a bump. So yeah, if you can spring for doing a long arm kit, 100% go for it. If you can't, there's nothing wrong with short arm. There's some awesome aftermarket options for short arm kits. You just want to potentially run less lift height, so that control arm's on less of a steep or jacked up angle, because that's really if you have a really steep and long arms first came out for TJs, they had a much shorter control arm than what you see currently under a JK or JL. So people with stuff, 6-8 inches of lift in those things. Control arms like this hit something on the road now, and it's got to do this, right?
Yeah,
so like, it's just terrible geometry. So I mean, the ride quality is awful. So that's where long arms are born. So yeah, if you can spring for a long arm kit, go for it. It's going to be better ride, no question.
Okay, right on. But there's more involved in a long arm kit, correct?
Yes. Oftentimes they're going to be weld on. So you're going to, for sure, you're going to have to cut parts off your Jeep. You're going to have to cut off existing bracketry, which is fine if you're in it for the long haul. If you've got your Jeep for maybe a 3-year lease, and you want to turn it back to stock before you trade it in, that's probably not something you want to pursue. But yeah, if you're pot committed and you know you're going to have the thing for the long haul, it's probably worth saving up for if you can stretch it out a little longer before you do that upgrade, and go to a long arm kit if you can.
Okay, perfect. I guess so then, just out of your experience, what have you found to be like the best performance shocks or the best even coilovers? Like in your opinion, what do you recommend, and what do you say definitely stay away from?
Sure. So if cost is no limit and you can go all out and you've got fabrication skills, I would do a coilover paired with a bypass shock, paired with a hydraulic bump stop. We haven't really talked about bypass shocks here, but if you're looking at shocks and you see ones with all these funky, crazy tubes outside and external adjustments.
I was gonna ask you about that. Yeah.
That's what a bypass shock is. It has essentially different zones of ride. So on the compression stroke, you have different levels of control. So you can control how fast that piston and fluid moves through the shock. So you can have it set up really soft on the first few inches. So you're hitting little bumps or little chop. It can easily absorb that. As you hit a bigger bump and that ramps up, you can stiffen the shock up. So you can control that bottoming out much better. Same, you can control the rebound flow and the rate at which that shock shoots out or extends to the ground. So yeah, if cost is no option, a bypass shock for sure is unbeatable. You've got external adjustments there, and it's infinitely tunable, and it's positions, like you can control the ride quality through the positions of that shock, which is unbelievable.
That's cool.
So that's what I would go for. Other than that, what I would stay away from, like we said, if you drive your stuff in the Northeast, don't do anything in terms of a coilover, an ORI, or a bypass shock. Yes, you'll love it the first year. I think you'll cry after one winter, and I would. I saw a dude local that's got like a really nice two-door white JK that was built by Steve at D3. Jeff's the owner's name, and he has like a fantastic Fox shock package on it. But yeah, after a couple winters, man, they're hammered dog shit. That's all you can say about it.
Is
So
that right?
yeah, I mean, you spent the big dough, right? Like you bought the top level shit. And I mean, after 2 years to look at it, and it looked like it needs full rebuild, complete teardown, resealed, new shafts. Fuck the works. I would just feel bad for someone that did that. So yeah, and then yeah, if you could spring for it, I mean, appropriate term. Yeah, any of the aftermarket stuff, like we're talking about, Falcon, Fox, King, Radflow. Touch base with those, find the company you're most comfortable buying from, and like lots of this stuff, if someone local to you has a vehicle on one of these shocks, maybe ask if they'll take you for a ride. Because like I say, ride subjective. I love my Rubicon JL and those Fox shocks. I'm happy with it, but I've heard other people say the rebound shit. They don't like how the rear end reacts versus the front. So yeah, there's no replacement for seat of the pants. You definitely don't necessarily want to trust those Facebookers and what they're what they're pushing on you. If you can go for a ride in someone's vehicle that's got a shock you're looking at, hands down, you can't beat that for experience.
All right, cool, awesome. A couple other questions that popped in there. I think this is going back to the short arm versus long arm. Can you weld to the frames of the new JLs or JTs? Colin says he heard that you can't weld to them.
No, I've seen people doing it. Yeah, I haven't done it myself, so I can't speak from 100% experience in terms of quality or what was drawn out from it. But I mean, those frames have a ton of welds on them. They're not one piece by any means. If you look at your JL or JT frame and JKs too, there's sleeve sections. Every body mount's welded on there. Every control arm mount's welded on there. The factory doesn't always do the nicest job of those welds. And I mean, we've seen some failures. Lots of people have in terms of track bars and whatnot. So yeah, I mean, they're doing it at the factory. I can't see why you can't do that. I think that'd be a myth. If someone knows otherwise, you can prove it out. Tell us. We'll put it in the show link with some information. Sure. But yeah. Okay,
cool. Question here is, do you have any experience with Bilstein 5100s? Are they good or no good?
I don't myself. Used to sell a few of those when we did retail. People were always happy with them. I think they're the same as a Rubicon Express monotube. So I think like Bilstein makes that shock for Rubicon Express. I've heard some people say the RE ones are a little cheaper and the valving's a little nicer for a Jeep. I mean, again, that's subjective. You might want to try and go for a ride in one before you bought them. But yeah, that Bilstein is like a good, let's call it one tier up from like a Rancho, a Skyjack, or any of the OE style white box shit. The Bilstein's a good step up from that. So yeah, I think a lot of people are happy with that as an upgrade.
Okay, good. Awesome. Last question here so far is a French tower the go-to, or hoops tied together better?
Good question. So this you would see, I mean, we're generally going to be talking about the rear end of a Jeep. So TJ, JK, JL, whatever. I like the fabricated towers we make and Frenching them into the frame. Essentially what that is your frame rail's fully boxed. You're going to cut a pocket into it, sink the tower into that pocket, then fully weld the thing. You gain a lot of strength doing it that way. Shock hoops, if you're going to put a shock hoop on any application, you've got to tie them together over the top. So we make like a brace. It's essentially a removable tube that you weld in between the two hoops. But yeah, in my opinion, shock hoops are a little old school. I know people still like them, but I think the fabricated towers are superior. They're stronger. They're ultimately smaller in terms of the pocket you got to cut through your tub to fit it or through your inner fender to fit it. So unless you like the look of hoops, which is cool, everyone's got different opinions on cosmetics. Unless you really like the look of that, I would go with the fabricated towers. I think they're better product.
Okay, cool. Sounds good. All right. So is there anything you can think of? Anything we missed? Any types? Any brands? Was there any brands that you would absolutely stay away from?
In terms of shocks?
Yeah. Because I see a lot of people, and again, this is all through social media, right? But a lot people either love or hate the Rubicon Express, as an example. You see that everywhere, right? Like,
yeah. So I mean, like I say, I don't have a personal experience running them myself. So actually, you know what? That would have been forever ago. I had a 4.5 inch kit in my TJ, but I mean that's going back like probably 20 years. But it was a Rubicon Express kit, but those shocks were not RE. They were like a Deutsche Tech shock. They're fine. They lasted me years. So yeah, I mean, I think I would try and like we said, I think if you're gonna look at buying a shock, see if you can get your ass in someone's Jeep that has what you're looking at. That's really gonna say it. Because like you say, if you're seeing lots of love for the Rubicon Express and lots of hate, same with the Falcons. I've heard people say they're too soft, too stiff. I mean, it's subjective, right? It's totally subjective. And once you start trying to, if we get into coilovers and bypasses and you start trying to tune that shock and improve that ride quality, you realize how subjective it is, but how challenging and difficult that can be. And it's really from experience. So yeah, I would try and go for a ride before you lay down big cash on a high-end shock. Cause it's not cheap. And I mean, truthfully, I find with any expensive mods, so if we're talking lift kits, shocks, tires, very few people will buy something and then admit it's shit. It takes some serious fortitude to say like, hey, I just spent $6,000 and those are fucking terrible. And I mean, I don't have a problem doing that. That's why I was trying to just run different stuff and test different tires out and different things and give people honest opinions. But that's a hard pill to swallow. If you spent big money and ultimately you're not happy with it, for you to turn around and admit at the Jeep meet or admit on social, like, hey, this does suck. That's hard to do. So you might not always get the most honest opinions.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. No, I ran, what did I run on my JK? I had just an absolute, like, I think it cost me $300 for the lift itself. And it was, man, I forget what it was, but
I think it was a Pro Comp, wasn't it?
It was a Pro Comp, but there was one of their brands, like a subsidiary or what have you. It started out great, like no problems. But after the first year, it was just considerably more uncomfortable, if you will, than it was when we started, you know. And I think Ryan had mentioned that just over time, like the bushings wear out and what have you, just could replace those.
The bushings can be shot, so that can provide a lot of slop. The cheaper shocks aren't going to have like the best sealing in that. So I mean, again, if we're talking Northeast and your shaft is going to pitch, salt exposure is going to make it pit. Now you're running that through the seal of the shock, not the best.
Good point. Yeah.
Ultimately, at that point, you're going to damage the seal. You're going to lose the fluid, and you're going to lose the nitrogen charge in the shock. So at that point, you've just got you've got a body. You've got a placeholder, basically. It's not damping. You've got a placeholder for your future shock that's going to go in there.
All right, cool. Well, if the person who bought it is watching this, because he's around. Apparently, the guy at the dealership snapped a picture the other day, and he's like, "Check out what's here." And my old Jeep still got the decals and everything on it.
Nice,
which is awesome, right? Shout out to whoever that is. But if it's a little bumpy, you know, maybe that, you know, take a look at that first. So
shocks. Start with the shocks.
Yeah, start with the shocks in the rear in particular, I think. So Thor Motorsports, it says, not sure that they're still around, but stay away from FOA.
Yeah. Okay. So yes, he's talking the coilover market. I don't think they make any OEM stuff for Jeeps, but they make air shocks, coilovers, bypass shocks. I don't like slagging on any brands, but yeah, I've heard of a lot of customers have ill-fated luck with those. If Colin's around, he's probably got horror stories about them. One story I've got is my friend Vince. He did a 1-ton TJ build. He's been my friend forever, but for some reason he's not always the best at taking advice. I told him buy Raplo shocks because I have them, I like them, and they work well. He wanted to save a few pennies, so he bought FOAs. They were leaking literally in the box. Like,
Really?
got them home, opened them up, the seals are shot, the shock's leaking. So now, fuck, what do? Do you spend the money to fix those?
Right.
Do you sell those secondhand as a leaking shock, lose money there? And he ended up on Raplo, and it was one of those like, dude, you should cry once, buy once,
Yeah.
be done with it. But yeah, that was a very expensive lesson for him. So yeah, Jamie there at Throw Motorsports, that's a good recommendation. That's not a brand you'll see a lot of love for out there, unfortunately.
Okay, right on. Okay, good. And then Dion just said quickly he bought an RC lift and it was total shit. Cost me more to fix it than anything else, but TMR products helped me fix all their crap. So there you go.
Rough country. I mean, fuck, they're not even on my radar when we start thinking about brands. But no, I get what he's saying. A lot of customers, I get why people are attracted to those kits. I'm sure if you search Jeep lift kit online, social media, they're going to dominate it. Price point looks amazing for all that you're getting. But I sell a lot of Johnny joints and replacement ends and try and help people kind of band-aid those kits and fix them up till they can move on to something better. It's kind of a shame that people get roped into some of that stuff.
Right. It's so true. Okay, cool. All right. Well, so I think we covered pretty much everything. I appreciate all the questions and everyone jumping in. Super helpful. I think, did we miss anything? I think we're good.
I think we nailed it. I was going to say, the questions are clutch that keep things flowing. So even if people have future show ideas, send them in, man. We're open to ideas, and we want input and submissions, and want to create episodes on what you want to hear about. So definitely speak up and let us know. And you can reach out to Paul through any of his channels or myself. Tell us what you want us to talk about on the podcast here, and we'll craft it to that.
Awesome. Perfect. Yeah. And you can get us at podcasts@jeepbeef.com. Of course, you can get us on Facebook at facebook.com/groups/Jeep Podcasts. Instagram at Jeep Podcasts. I think that's about it.
That's us.
We're on YouTube as well. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the bell so you can be notified of every new show. Leave some comments. If you have any questions there, we see those as well. Somebody was looking for a skirt the other day. I'm not sure what that was about, but we have no skirts in your size, sir. So I don't.
That's YouTube comments for you.
That's right. Yeah, I can't help you out with the skirts, but So and also make sure you check out Ryan's new store at Off-Road Addiction. It'll be opening April 5th, which is just a couple days from now. It's in London, but I'm not sure where. So just check out the Off-Road Addiction website. And of course, be sure to check out the sale going on right now at TMR with the all the products that can help you with shocks and mounts and all that fun stuff. Oh, and also, by the way, we are hiring. So if anyone is listening to this and they're into Jeeps and social media or has a background in digital marketing, we need someone big time. So reach out to me. You can get me by any of these channels. Leave a comment. Stalk me on Facebook. Hit me up on Twitter. I don't care. Just find me because we're looking for someone big time. Awesome. All right. Well, with that said, then I guess we're out. And until next time, just keep that rubber side down, as they say. And next Thursday, we'll be here with bells on. So thanks again, Tim. I learned a lot. And we'll see everyone next week.
Awesome. See ya.